And while you're here, why don't you jump in the chat, tell us where you're watching from, and if you have any fun takeaways from today's games. We're going to start things off tonight, as we always do, with the rundown. A couple of big games here today. The first one, Alabama-Florida. One of the better games of the day. Alabama ended up winning this game 31-29. I think the big takeaway from this one, Bryce Young looked like he was in command again. 22 for 35 passing, 233 yards, 3 touchdowns. That Russell Wilson style passer, he continued. He was conservative when he needed to be conservative. He was aggressive when he needed to be aggressive. And I think there is a very real discussion to be had about him being the best Devy quarterback in all of college football. We'll probably talk about that here in a little bit. Beyond Bryce Young, Jamison Williams, John Mechie, Jace McClellan all chipped in the receiving game. Williams 4 catches, 61 yards. Mechie 6 for 42. McClellan 4 for 41 and 1. Young spreads the ball around, and all of these guys are the beneficiaries of that. Bama was a bit ineffective running the ball, but with how efficient they are passing it, it doesn't really seem to matter. Florida staged a massive comeback, was a 2-point conversion away from tying that game up late in the fourth quarter. Emory Jones, off of a disappointing start to the season, had himself a decent game. 17 for 27, 181 yards passing, an interception, added another about 80 yards and a touchdown on the ground. So big day there overall for him. Anthony Richardson was on emergency duty with that hamstring and did not make an appearance. Beyond Emory Jones, Malik Davis and Dameon Pierce both had themselves a couple of touchdowns on the day to keep that game close. Next up here, we've got South Carolina at Georgia. Take it away, Matt.
Yeah, this was an interesting game, I guess I'll put it that way. JT Daniels ended up having a really good game here, leading Georgia to a win 42-13 over the South Carolina Gamecocks. Chris Moxley's South Carolina Gamecocks. It was good to see JT Daniels back, obviously after dealing with the injury last week. And I don't even remember who it was at this point that played at quarterback, but it doesn't matter because he's not very good. Let's start with the South Carolina side, though. Luke Doty, 13 for 26, 153, 5.9 average with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. The only really position we care about, though, on the South Carolina team are the running backs. Zakondre White, 5 for 31, 6.2 average with 0 touchdowns. Kevin Harris, 16 for 31, 1.9 and 0. And then Marshawn Lloyd, 5 for 19, 3.8 and 0. None of those guys really looked that effective, though. I think that was probably expected with how good that Georgia defense has been so far this season. Just a little bit on this game. The secondary has been very good for Georgia, but Josh Vann, wide receiver for South Carolina, had himself a game here. 3 receptions, 128 yards, 42.7 yard average, and 1 touchdown. On Georgia's side, JT Daniels, 23 of 31, 303, 9.8, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. Again, looked decent in this game, though I don't think South Carolina has a great defense. Want to see him play against some better defenses down the road, but it was good to see him get back out there and actually play in this one. Rushing stats, my guy, Kendall Milton, best running back on the team this week. 10 for 66, a 6.6 average, though. Does not get a touchdown. The other 2 did. Zamir White, 8 for 51, a 12-point average, a 12.8, 1 touchdown. And then Dalvin Cook's little brother, 4 for 51, 12-point average, 1 touchdown as well. And then the wide receivers of Donnie Mitchell had a good game, 4 for 77, 19-yard average, 1 touchdown. Jermaine Burton, 3 for 70, 23.3 average and a touchdown. And then Brock Bowers, hitting the over on both of our prize picks this morning. 5 for 53, 10.6. Doesn't get a touchdown, though, but continues to be possibly, as we talked about a little bit this morning or on Devy Debate, the tight end behind Michael Myers. I wonder why Myers is in my head, and that's Halloween. Michael Mayer, tight end for Notre Dame, as the best tight end in the business.
You got there. Good stuff, Matt.
That's all that matters, right?
Well, while I have you here, do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened in that Purdue-Notre Dame game as well?
I sure can, because that was another great game. Purdue loses to Notre Dame 13-27. Jack Plummer, 25 for 36, 187, 5.2, 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions. Mr. King, Moxley's guy this morning, he told you guys to start. Yeah, Doru, sure. 10 for 45, 4.5 average with 0 touchdowns. Did get 39 yards on 6 catches for 6.5. Had himself a decent day. Moxley talked a little bit about him stepping up for Horvath there. Did okay here against a very good, though, Notre Dame defense. David Bell, 7 for 64, 9.1 average with 0 touchdowns. And then Durham, one of the tight ends I think has been kind of sleeper here. Not a lot of people talking about him. He's actually been pretty good for fantasy at least. 6 for 29, did not get a touchdown. Jack Cohen in this game, 15 for 32, 23, 7.42 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Continues to be just good enough to not get benched. For Tyler, is it Buchner? One of those last names, but he's very good. He'll obviously be the guy moving forward. Kyron Williams continues to elevate his draft stock and make people like me who don't think he's going to be that good at the next level look bad. 12 for 91, 7.6 average on the ground with a touchdown, and then adds 2 receptions for 47 yards and a touchdown as well. Kid can just do it all. He's a really, really good college running back.
Yeah, a big day there for Kyron Williams. Without him, they probably do not win that game. Thank you, Matt,
absolutely,
for hopping in. We will talk to you here in a little bit. Mr. Kevin Coleman, let's get you in here. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Nebraska at Oklahoma, probably a closer game than most people expected, right?
Yeah, this probably saves Scott Frost's job for 3 more games, maybe 4. We'll see. Nebraska, lost 23-16. It was pretty bad for Oklahoma. If you go to the Nebraska side, Adrian Martinez, he's been there 7 years, it feels like. He had 289 yards and a touchdown and interception. Omar Manning had a touchdown. Xavier Betts out of the death, 2 receptions, 61 yards. So Betts is back, I guess. But I think the real story here is Rattler. He did not look very good. He had 214 yards and a touchdown. He continued to throw it into traffic. I don't understand maybe some of his decision making, and that's really where he's got to get better at. Eric Gray had 15 carries, 84 yards, but Kennedy Brooks is right there taking that load. So he has 14 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown. And I think that for C2C purposes, Kennedy Brooks is going to be a side in people's thorns, especially with Eric Gray's ADP and where it was going. I just think that Kennedy's just going to get that volume still. And then Hasselwood had 6 receptions, 61 yards. He looked okay. But, I know Mario Williams, our guy, Felix loves him. He thinks he's already in the Hall of Fame. But he had an explosive play, looked okay. I would say it was very uninspiring for Oklahoma. If they can't beat Nebraska by more than 6 or 7, the playoffs, they're going to lose by 40 to Alabama. I just don't see it. But overall, they got the win. They got out of there.
Yeah, and sometimes that can be more important than anything else. Thank you there, Kevin. I'll talk to you again here in a little bit as well. All right, let's welcome in a very special guest that we have with us here tonight, Mr. Brandon Lejeune, Mr. Devi Dashboard himself. How are you doing tonight, Brandon?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Love what you guys are doing. So
yeah, we appreciate you very much as well. Love what you're doing. You're a Penn State guy.
Yep.
Big win here. The game that just wrapped up. Break down this game here a little bit for us.
Well, I think I was excited as a Penn State fan, facing an SEC team, because as a Penn State guy, right, we know Jahan Dotson is an asset, a W asset that's translatable. But for me in this game, I was really interested to see if anybody out of the backfield could really make an impact on Penn State. So Noah Cain had 19 attempts for 46 yards and 1 TD. He looked good, had a nice touchdown. Broke some tackles and got in, but I wasn't super impressed. But Kavon Lee had only 2 carries for 15. But I thought this was actually Clifford's best game. I've been watching a lot of Penn State games. I thought he was efficient, and really he was 28 out of 32 for 280 yards, 2 TDs. He had that 1 pick, but it was kind of like a throw up there towards the end of the half. But I thought he really was a good game manager. Super excited to see. Him actually be able to elevate these pass catchers, right? Because Jahan Dotson, we know, is going to go to the NFL. So the other, Parker Washington had a nice game, 9 out of 8, 8 out of 9 rather, for 49 yards. But Brenton Strange, right? We're all looking for that Theo Johnson breakout, and I think maybe Theo Johnson had a really nice reception for 37 yards, I believe. Yeah, 1 catch for 37 yards in the first half. So I was thinking, is this going to be his breakout game? But it ended up being Brenton Strange, who had 4 for 4 for 71 yards and a TD, and looked, like he was the tight end that's probably going to get most of the production for Penn State, at least this season. On the other side of the ball, it was all about, Tank, right? He is really the only dynasty asset, I think, that's going to translate to our dynasty rosters, at least that I see. He was 23 of 102 and 2 TDs. We knew that they were going to funnel the entire Auburn offense, I think, around Tank. Bo Nix had that really first nice week 1, but has gone back to his normal inconsistent self, was 18 of 31 for 149 yards, 0 TDs, and 0 interceptions. And then on these big games, The quarterback needs to show up, and Bo Nix, I don't think, is really a Devy asset moving forward. Kobe Hudson, he is a wide receiver. He is a guy that, I've had in my dashboard, is a guy that we're all kind of thinking might be the number one receiver coming out. For Auburn this year, he was caught 3 balls out of 5 attempts for only 53 yards. And Demetrius Robinson, it seems like he's been in the league forever for 14. So, really an ineffective passing game. And to win these big games, you need a balanced attack. And, it was all about Tank Bigsby. But, hey, man, I'm happy for my Lions. I've been to many Penn State games. The whiteout is an exhilarating experience, and they were out full force today for Penn State. So great win by my Nittany Lions today.
Tough to beat that atmosphere. Brandon, thank you again for joining us. If you
Appreciate
guys don't know Brandon, you can find him at Devy Deep Dive on Twitter. He hosts the Devy Deep Dive podcast, and he has the Devy Dashboard as well. So check all of that out if you have not already. And again, Brandon, good luck to your Eagles tomorrow. Thanks for joining us here tonight. Yeah.
Jalen Hurts.
All righty, guys. We are going to go into our headline segment that we do weekly here. I'm going to bring Kevin and Matt back in here because why not? I can. I'm in control here. All right, guys. Big day in college football. We saw a lot of young players kind of make their first mark here in college football. The first name that comes to mind here, I think that we need to talk about, Jaxson Dart. Quarterback at USC. Keaton Slovis, much maligned, went down early with an injury. Dart stepped in and overcame a shaky start, led him to victory, and looked really, really good doing so. Has the torch officially been passed there, Kevin?
Yeah, it got passed when he signed. If we're being honest, that's how I've said it. I've been there for a while. The thing about Dart, he's just way more athletic, and that just pops off the tape. And you watch that when he's out there. And I just think Slovis has to. I like how you mentioned that too about him transferring. I mentioned that on the last Debbie Royale podcast. I said, hey, probably Slovis's best bet is to transfer somewhere, do better next year wherever he goes to get better draft slot. Maybe if he can, maybe he goes back to Arizona. They're terrible. Maybe they need a quarterback, and maybe he could put up numbers and stuff. But I think this is it, because I think whoever comes in there as their head coach is going to want Dart to be their guy and kind of transition forward.
Matt, what did you think about Dart's day today?
I thought he looked awesome. I don't even see a way they would go back to Slovis this year. That offense just looked completely different with Dart. And I think it's because he also brings just so much more arm talent than Slovis has. When he was slinging that ball, there was I want to say it was Drake London, where he was like mid of the field and threw it across field to Drake London. Just it had taken 2 hours for that ball to get there from Slovis, and Dart got it there within 2 seconds. So I was all here for Dart. I think he keeps a job moving forward. They mentioned Slovis had a concussion. I did not know that Slovis has dealt with those in the past. And so that might be an issue for him moving forward. I think he'd be a great transfer to Georgia. This seems like the perfect fit. Once JT Daniels moves on this year, Slovis can just slide right in, and they can just continue to follow each other through the college ranks and then up into the NFL.
And just to get Jaxson Dart today, 391 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I believe he lost a fumble as well. The big beneficiaries there, Drake London and Gary Bryant Jr. London had himself 13 catches, 170 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bryant 3 for 56 and 1. Is that kind of a stock boost for those guys as well, if Dart is the permanent guy there?
I think for Bryant, sure. He hasn't really done much with Slovis. London's kind of been the guy, right? We've all talked. It's whether you think he can be, I saw Ray talking today. He thinks he'll be Mike Evans 2.0 at the NFL level. Some people don't like London because he's mostly a contested catch guy, and we have seen those guys have struggled a little bit here in the NFL. As of late, London's always been the guy. I think seeing Gary Bryant Jr. have that game, if he can do it again next week, all of my roster ships of Gary Bryant Jr. will be very, very happy and hope that they don't turn back to Slovis, because he looked phenomenal out there, and they were using him differently too, right? I don't know, and Kevin, you can probably tell me this because you pay a lot more attention to the USC program. You've talked about Dart for a long time. Did they change offensive coordinators? Because I also don't ever remember Helton using Bryant in those sweeps like they used Bryant today as well. Like he was actually getting some rushing work that I've never really seen them do in the past.
Yeah, when you watched it, I think they just wanted to get more involved in the offense. Maybe Helton was holding them back. Maybe Helton wanted to be more of that kind of passing attack. I've not been a big fan of Graham Harrell there anyway. I've always thought it was kind of elementary and never had any motion, anything that you'd like to see from an offensive team. Just get different looks and just get different reads. But yeah, Drake London, like to your value credit, he's okay. I don't know about Mike Evans yet. I just worry about that contested catch stuff. He's okay. Like I think that he's there, but the NFL is transitioning away guys like him unless they can beat DK Metcalf, and he can't beat DK Metcalf. He's not in that caliber of athlete. So like I just think of N'Keal Harry all over again. And I don't want to put that comp on him yet because he's a very good player, but I think it's somewhere in between N'Keal Harry and Mike Evans. That's a very, very, very big divide.
I was about to say
I'm
that
just not going to touch him.
Almost every player ever.
That's why I'm out. That's why I'm out. I'm just not gonna. I just feel like he can fall into both those categories.
Yeah, that's fair enough. A couple of close games today. Teams threatened. Cincy was one of them. Down back and forth against with Indiana there for a while before pulling away at the end. Cincy's undefeated. And I think we kind of thought that they probably would be at this point in the year. We all kind of circled that Notre Dame game on our calendars as the big one for them. But up to this point, have Ritter and Cincinnati done enough to be considered a top 5 team, Matt?
I don't know about top 5. I think they're 8 now. I think they could push for top 5 if they end up obviously beating Notre Dame. I've said I think they're going to make the playoffs this year. The Indiana win hurts them a little bit, I think, though, because they didn't look great. I mean, Ritter was not playing well until the second half. I was very tuned into this game because I've been a big fan of Ritter for a while here. But I also think because Indiana has not looked that good this year, that also hurts them a little bit. We were hoping Indiana would come in undefeated at this point, and then if Cincinnati was able to beat them and then go on and beat Notre Dame, that would increase their chances of getting into the playoffs, because outside of that, they really don't have anybody I think they'll lose to. So that the game not looking that great and everything, I think could hurt them a little bit. I do want to ask you guys one question. They talked a little bit about it on the broadcast, and I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because I don't think I'd put him that high, and I do like Ritter a lot. They talked about him being a Heisman favorite this year. Now, I know Rattler and all those guys have taken a step back. I feel like Corral's probably the betting favorite at the moment, but would you put Ritter, like, does he get an invite to New York if he continues playing the way he has? Because the stats tell you he had a good day. He did not look good in the first half, but at the end of the day, he ends up with pretty good stats. He was a 230 or 40 passing, rushing touchdown, 50, 60 on the ground.
Yeah, for me, no, I don't think so. Because I think he's going to have a fall at some point. I just don't. I was on the Ritter train with you for a little bit, and then I've just been watching him, and I just don't. If they lose to Notre Dame next week, it's over. Heisman's over. Everything's kind of over for them, because Notre Dame's not good either. I hate to break it to you, and we need Notre Dame to lose, because I swear to God, if I watch them lose this by 60 to Alabama in the playoff again, I'm gonna lose my mind, because they're not good either. And so I really think that Ritter's got to step up his accuracy. I think that running game, but the biggest problem with Cincinnati is they have no weapons on the outside. Like Alec Pierce is okay, but he's not like, he's definitely, that's Wes Welker light with no separation. And so like, there's no outside weapons out there. So that's going to hurt Ritter too. And Ford's taking a little bit of his rushing upside, because he's not getting the carries or the attempts as he used to.
You have to figure if they make the playoff that he certainly will be in consideration to get invited to the Heisman, but I can't see him winning it, at least not at the current clip. And Kevin, you nailed it there. They just don't have, there's nobody that scares you really in the passing attack. They have some guys that are okay, but nothing there that I think is overwhelming. I know Colin will talk about it. He put like a couple bucks on him to win the Heisman back in May. Yeah. Plus 10,000 odds. So,
but I mean, does him not having anybody on the outside possibly help his odds? Because he is making those guys look better when they are not good at all. Like I was watching that today, and Kevin, you talked about them having no separation. I mean, like none of those guys had separation. I understand that Illinois still has a very good secondary, but I mean, come on, that he was trying to have to thread stuff into a needle. And Kevin, you just mentioned it. One of his biggest issues is really good accuracy. So the fact that he has been doing that a little bit with these wide receivers, I think he's got to bump him up a little bit. I don't know if he wins the Heisman. I'm with you guys, but I think he can get the invite, even if he does lose to Notre Dame and still goes out. Because I don't think they'll fall out of the top 10. I think he gets the invite. I think Colin maybe winning whatever that is, $10,000. I mean, I'll be rooting for you, bud. But I do think that was probably a long shot bet there.
Colin said he'll take us all on vacation if he wins that. He just texted me. So we can all
Desmond Ridder win the Heisman. I am all in now. He's winning the Heisman. Let's make this happen.
Yeah, I'm already figuring out where to send my vote. Let's move on to the next headline here, guys. So Ohio State welcomed, was it Tulane today or Tulsa? It was Tulsa, wasn't it?
Tulsa. Thank God it wasn't Tulane because they would have lost.
Yeah. Ohio State was pretty shaky in that game. It was close at halftime. It was not the blowout that I think everybody anticipated. We're going to talk a little about Trayvon Henderson later, so let's table that part of this game for now. But CJ Stroud, 15 for 25 today, 185 yards and a touchdown, one touchdown, one interception, I believe. And a fumble. Not the kind of game that you would expect him to have in really the first game where you thought he could breathe a little bit, really. So let's do a temperature check here, Kevin. How are you feeling on CJ Stroud? If I had to give you a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being let's not talk about it, and 10 being all in, where are we here?
Well, so I would probably say, like, for me, it's like 7. Like, he needs to figure his shit out. I think that he overthrows a lot of his passes. I do think, though, that I think he feels the pressure. Like, I think what we're starting to see is like he feels that pressure. I did see a report. Matt's kind of the Ohio State guy for some reason. I would say that he's injured. There's something wrong with that shoulder.
Yes, he is. He is injured.
And I did see a report today, like literally right after the game, they said that like he probably needs to sit, but he doesn't want to sit because if he does sit, McCord might come in there and just steal his job, and he'll get Slovis like JT Daniels did. Kind of that like, hey, that backup guy's really good, so maybe he's pressing too and saying he's good to go. But I think there is something to be worried about. Like I just don't think I see the people that make excuses for him. We get some people upset. But I do think that he's got to be better because of the weapons that he has around him. And so there is some, I think McCord's a better passer. I've always said that. Even from the spring game, you saw he's a better passer. So, and they're not really using Stroud in the rushing attack. I mean, negative 14 yards every time when they do option reads, you watch it, they never he never takes off and runs. And RPOs, he always just hands it off. There's no, I don't know. It feels like he's 2 seconds behind right now. And I don't know if that's because of the pressure that we feel. And I think maybe Ryan Day's got to fix that. That's on Day though.
Yeah, I agree pretty much with everything Kevin said. I mean, I'm right there with him, 7, 8. And, I agree that the shoulder probably is playing a little bit into this, but that happened in, I believe it was the third quarter of the Minnesota game. He was overthrowing wide receivers up until that point as well. So I can't put that much on the shoulder. I definitely think it was bothering him. There were times that they cut to him in that game and you could just see he was clearly in some pain. And then on top of that, I agree with him feeling the pressure because when he threw that interception, he just looked defeated. And I've never really seen him look that way. I think that is not just the pressure of wanting to be good, but knowing that I think he's getting closer and closer to possibly being benched. I don't think he should be just yet, but I think this game this week is going to be huge. If he cannot go out there and light it up against Akron, I would not be surprised if they put somebody else in. And I know everybody thinks because I'm such a big McCord guy, I don't even care if it's Jack Miller. Like, they've got to see if somebody else can do something with this offense because this team should not be this bad. I understand the defense is bad, but this offense should be able to walk off the bus and score 40 points. And they can. We talked a little bit about this on Devy Debate, Austin. They've got, if you want to compare them to Alabama in a way, now I understand Alabama probably does have a little bit of better offensive line, but I think their running backs stack up just based on Henderson alone, not even talking about Maya Williams and Teague, and their wide receivers I think are just as good, if not a little bit better based on the experience Ohio State has in their room. And yet they cannot figure out a way to get that offense going. And it's definitely not all on Stroud. A lot of it is on Ryan Day, just like Kevin mentioned, but some of it is on Stroud, and they've got to get that figured out.
Yeah. I think most Buckeye fans like you, Matt, are hoping for better days ahead there. Last question here I just want to pose to you guys before we move on to a slightly different discussion, guys. DJU for a lot of people was the presumptive QB1 for Devy, and if not your QB1, he certainly was in your top tier along with some other names, Sam Howell, Spencer Rattler, possibly Bryce Young, although we hadn't really seen him play yet. Clemson has not been very good offensively, though. They barely beat Georgia Tech today, 14-6, and really came up with basically a goal line stand at the end to keep that from possibly going into overtime. The passing game has not been good at all. I'm trying to look up quickly here what DJ's stats were today, but I mean,
he barely went over 100 yards, barely.
Yeah, I mean, he has not been accurate. He looks lost. He's throwing the ball, sailing the ball at times. They really only won today because of Will Shipley, true freshman running back there, 21 for 88 and 2 on the ground. What is going on at Clemson, Kevin? I mean, is this like full on panic mode for DJU and Clemson there?
Well, I want to give Matt credit because he did talk about it. I know he got crap for it. I think that Dabo's scheme is just out of date a little bit. Like, I think the thing that people forget that Saban has done is he always brings in new ideas and new people with his offensive scheme. That's why he brought in Lane Kiffin, remember? And they said, hey, we all know that Saban hated the, spread option and spread offense. And he brought in Lane and he said, hey, you got to teach me this because everybody's doing it. And I don't think Dabo, has he changed anything? Has that offense changed in the last 8 years? Like, I think you could probably put Deshaun Watson back there and it's the same kind of concepts, reads. There's nothing there that's there. I also say, I know you guys talk about it on your guys' podcast. I listened to it. The wide receivers, it's the same type of wide receiver, 6'4", 230. No, there's no different pace there. No guys that can create separation from the slot, I don't feel like. And so I think they've missed on a couple of recruiting classes as well. They had those transfers this year. And when I did the Clemson episode, I mean, their defense is amazing. They returned all 11 guys. I knew their defense was going to be good, but that offensive flow, the offensive line is weak. I think DJU is struggling with scheme, those type of things. But he's got to be better. 46.9 QBR is definitely not going to be there either.
Yeah, I put part of the blame on DJ and then part of it on Dabo. DJ has to be better. If he's going to be the quarterback we think he is, he has to be better. You cannot be this bad. But where I put the blame on Dabo is you just mentioned Deshaun Watson, Kevin. I don't think DJU is on Watson or even Lawrence's level. I think he's a step down from those guys. And so then coaching actually, in my opinion, matters for those prospects. Like, to get the best out of them, you have to have good schemes. And I don't think Dabo has ever had a good scheme. The only time his offenses were good when Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence were his quarterbacks. I think you could argue that they were so good because Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence were their quarterbacks. It was not Dabo. Now, I'm not trying to say he's a bad head coach. He's a good head coach. He would not have 2 national championships if he wasn't, and been in 4, I think. He's a good head coach. But I don't think he's a good offensive play caller. I don't think his offensive play calling group or whoever it is that's calling plays is very good. I think that is hurting DJU. Austin, you mentioned the wide receivers a while back. I think that's the same thing. They just don't have anybody who's, in my opinion, like a deep threat that they can even stretch defenses with. Losing Amari Rodgers, I think, last year hurts DJU a little bit here as well because he doesn't have anybody in the short area he can dump off to. Those running backs are all kind of new guys that they're interchanging them. It would seem like Shipley's finally going to be the guy moving forward, but next week it may not even be him. I just think this offense is a mess entirely. They need to get it figured out. I would not be surprised if if Clemson ends up losing another game at some point this year. They just don't look like the same team they have the past couple years.
At a program as big as Clemson and Bama and Ohio State and some of these schools are, I don't think that you should really be recruiting solely based on scheme. That's okay at North Texas. No offense to any of North Texas fans out there, where, you are looking for these bargain barrel guys. So you are looking for, maybe some guys that fall through the cracks. And so they have to do maybe specific things to fit a specific scheme. I think at Clemson size school, you go out and get the best talent available and you mold your team to that. And they have not done that on offense the past few years. They, like you guys both said, all their receivers are basically the same guy. There is very little variation there. All the running backs, except for Will Shipley, are basically the same guy. Lynn J. Dixon, Kobe Pace, Phil Maffa. Maffa's a little more of a bruiser, but I mean, really, those guys are all basically the same as that guy. There are no standout traits there amongst any of those guys. So they've just really done a bad job at kind of varying that up and saying, we'll take the talent and we'll figure it out later. I think that's probably coming back to bite them a little bit. Let's move in here to a little bit of a different discussion, guys. And I guess we can kind of bounce it right off of DJU. There is a lot of talk now that Bryce Young has taken over the number 1 quarterback mantle from whoever had it before, whether it would be DJU or Spencer Rattler, who we said had a little bit of a questionable day. Those are kind of the other guys in that tier. Do you guys agree with that? Do you think at this point in time, if you had to do a startup, whether it be Devy or Campus to Canton, and you were thinking about going quarterback, that Bryce Young would be the first guy that you would take there? Hey, Kevin, I'll come to you actually, because I know you've been Mr. Bryce Young for a while now.
Yeah, no, I would take Bryce, but I was already taking Bryce anyway. So like, this isn't like me being reactionary. Like, I like Bryce. I think everybody just forgot how good Bryce is because Mac Jones played and won the didn't win the Heisman, but won the national championship, and everybody's like, oh, see, Bryce couldn't beat him out. Well, yeah, now he's starting in the NFL. So I think there's that part of it too. But Bryce, he does a lot of things well. Like he has that functional athleticism. I will say there's a misnomer about Bryce though. Like I don't know who the hell taught Bryce was like a dual threat athlete. He is not a dual threat guy. I keep hearing that everywhere. And like in high school, sure, you can kind of be dual threat because you should see some of the dudes that these guys play against. Like, yeah, he is the best athlete on the field. Like, there's a different level of athlete when you get to the next level. And he doesn't have that, but that's okay. Like, because he is a legit pocket passer and he has that elite release. I think his release is exceptional. And I think the best thing that he kind of sets him apart is his IQ. Like, he might be one of the smartest quarterbacks I've seen in the last couple of years. Just transition well, he makes plays well, it goes through his reads well. I love his accuracy. Like I would take him just because I think he's a better pro prospect. I think he's a safer pro prospect. So I think he can step in and I think he's going to be lead all kinds of different teams. Whereas DJU, I think some teams are going to have to use him in different ways and they're going to have to kind of cater a team around him, or Bryce can step in and just lead a team.
Yeah, I don't see any way you can't have Bryce Young at 1 right now. I mean, I was holding on by the tiniest of threads over the past couple of weeks with DJU, just because he was so impressive last year. But based on what we've seen this year, I mean, what Bryce Young has done is outplays, in my opinion, what even DJU did last year. Outside of Quinn Ewers, I'm just kidding. I would take Bryce Young as the top quarterback right now in Devy C2C formats. And I honestly think right now, with the way he's played and the way every other quarterback has played, except for maybe Matt Corral. But even then, I still have questions about Corral because of what I've seen in the past. I think Bryce Young has separated himself into a tier amongst itself at the quarterback position in Devy and C2C, and then everybody else is in tier 2 and lower. I don't think anybody else should be with Bryce Young right now.
The Bryce Young clean slate argument is definitely an interesting one to have. He's only played 3 games so far, 2 of them against not particularly strong opponents. Today was really his first test, and he passed that. And I think that might put that clean slate argument to bed. I think it was smart to at least give him a few games, just as DJU had a 2 or 3 game head start. So it was only fair, kind of give Bryce Young a couple games here to finally make that determination. I do think we've hit that point. We can finally say Bryce Young probably should be the QB1 there. When do we stop doubting that at this point Bama is just a factory at quarterback now? I mean, they had that QB room that had Hurts, Tua, and Mac Jones. Those guys all went top 50 in the NFL, all starting quarterbacks. They'll all be starting tomorrow. And Bryce Young certainly looks like that next guy. Is he... So here's a question for you. Would you rather have him or Bijan Robinson? I know the quarterback kind of reigns supreme, but I mean,
yeah.
Is he's surpassed Bijan as well for that 2023 overall spot?
Number 1 overall in the draft, NFL draft?
Well,
you're talking about
Devy, C2C, whatever.
Yeah, I think so. Because most of us play super flex format. So yes, I think you're going to take Bryce Young because I agree with Kevin. I think his floor is so safe that you don't have those questions about what he can be at the NFL level. I think Bijan's too. I don't think anybody else is there. And I would listen to an argument for taking Bijan over Bryce. But I think for me personally, because of how NFL and then how I value quarterbacks, especially in super flex formats, I would take Bryce 1.
Kevin, you agree? Yeah.
I mean, I would kind of agree. Bijan's special though, so like I wouldn't hate it. Like I understand it, especially if running backs are king. He's going to step right in and be right there too. But I think Bryce, for me, quarterback wise, is there. I think there is a realistic shot that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But Trayvon Henderson can be in the top 3 too.
He's already better than Bijan. Oops, did I say that out?
All right, Matt, you are gone. It's just going to be me and Kevin for the rest of the show here. No, I mean, we'll talk a little about Trayvon here a little bit later. But I mean, just some very talented guys coming through here. All these freshmen and second year, but really freshman breakouts with COVID certainly made these first few weeks of the season really enjoyable. On that note, I guess maybe we should hop into this here, guys. We ask every week, who saw the biggest change in the campus to Canton format? So kind of a stock up, stock down. Depending on the day. Kevin, I'll come to you first. Who saw the biggest change in their value based on today?
Yeah, for me, actually, and I think it's kind of a weird value change, but Joshua Downs absolutely crushed today. He had 8 receptions, 203 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and him and Howe just look in tune. So, I mean, I'll keep it simple. For me, I think Downs is going to be there. I think that we can start looking at him as like, where's he going to fit in that offense? It's really lazy to say it's Diami Brown every time, but I mean, it's hard not to say it. But I mean, he's kind of there. How can he get in that second day draft capital? I think like early second day. Can he get there? But if he keeps developing and he has this with Howe, I love that. And then next year he's going to have Drake May, who's maybe better than Howe.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with, just to keep it easy as well, one of my guys, Calvin Austin. I mean, he's just going out there and smashing again this year. Had a 95-yard touchdown run today. I think, I talked a little bit today. I was jumped on with Ray for a little bit and talked a little college football. I think with the way the NFL is not afraid to draft these smaller wide receivers and the way that a lot of these college coaches, NFL coaches are using college concepts, Austin could be a guy who could be really good in the NFL. He's got that track speed, and he is actually a good wide receiver. He's not just a track star trying to play wide receiver. He's a track star who is a wide receiver. I'm really excited for Austin with what he's doing. I thought it was going to be with Grant Gunnell, but I can't remember how to say his last name. Is it Hentages?
I think it's Hennigan, isn't it?
Hennigan? I don't remember. Sure. Sam Hennigan he's been phenomenal as a freshman. He's helped out Austin just as much as I thought Gunnell would. So Calvin Austin, rocket ship emoji up. He's going to help you in C2C formats at least be top 5 wide receiver, I think, for CFF purposes. And I do think he's going to get pretty decent draft capital and end up being an NFL player as well.
Both good names. The one that I really want to mention is someone that's a key talking point later, so I won't do it. I think it's time to start discussing Brennan Armstrong. I'm not saying that he's a day one quarterback or anything like that in the NFL draft, but he is carrying a Virginia offense that we did not think was going to be very good this year. And B, we thought he'd be a very nice CFF type guy, but maybe not anything beyond that. But the last 2 weeks, they played Illinois week 2. He put up a 75% completion percentage, 405 yards, 5 touchdowns, another 31 yards on the ground. Tonight, went out and went toe-to-toe with Sam Howell, ended the game 39 for 54 for 554 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, this guy is single-handedly carrying a bunch of my fantasy teams along the way with him this year, but we had a lot of questions about him throwing the ball, and he's doing so effectively with a wide receiver group that doesn't really have a high-end guy. Like, Sam Howell has Josh Downs, and Matt Corral has, Jonathan Mingo or something. I mean, his best receiver is Dontavian Wicks, who I like Wicks, but he's not a high-end prospect. So I think the discussion is going to happen sooner or later on Brennan Armstrong here, what we think of him, but certainly a name to watch out for as we move forward. I don't want to know what Matt's laughing about, and I'm assuming it's possibly at my expense.
Jaron Hall, baby, 174 passing yards already. Let's go. I'm excited.
I'm so tired of being wrong and Matt being right. Just killing me.
I'm here for it.
All right. So the last couple weeks, Jarek has given us a by the numbers segment. He has another one here for us tonight. So let us hear from the data whiz himself, Mr. Jarek Backus.
When you just don't understand the numbers, it's time to dive into the classroom with the beautiful mind of Jarek Backus and by the numbers.
Thanks. Today I'll be looking at how Anthony Richardson's advanced stats stack up against previous players with similar opportunity. Anthony Richardson is in an interesting situation. He's sharing time with Emory Jones, who's the clear-cut starter, but everyone can tell Richardson is the most talented QB in that locker room. For reference, in Game 1, Richardson had 15 plays that went like this: 3 of 8 for 40 yards passing, and 7 carries for 160 yards and a TD. Good for a QBR of 99.9. Emory Jones had a 62.5 QBR in that same game. Richardson's second game, he went 3 of 3 for 152 yards and 2 TDs. And on the ground, he added 4 carries for 115 yards and another touchdown. Good for a QBR of 100. Emory Jones only had a QBR of 47 in that game. From his first 2 games, we can easily see Anthony Richardson's specialty is rushing, but he hasn't been a slouch in the passing game whatsoever. Now that we've reviewed what he did this season, Let's see how that compares to other QBs in the past. For this comparison, I looked at players between 35 and 75 PPR points on the season. Richardson is sitting at 55, so this gives us players who had similar production. Richardson has an adjusted yards per attempt at 21, which is insane. I filtered for everyone over 14 adjusted yards per attempt because I'd consider any value above that elite. Anthony Richardson has earned a 1.46 EPA per play so far, which is unheard of. So I filtered for all players who earned above a 0.6 EPA per play, because this gives us the top 5% of all players. This gives us our population of players with low opportunity but high efficiency when given the chance. So who shows up? Our list shakes down to Connor Kramer of New Mexico State in 2017, Mitch Trubisky in 2015, Nick Fitzgerald of Mississippi State in 2015, Kyler Murray in 2017, Brett Gabbert of Miami of Ohio in 2020, and Casey Thompson of Texas in 2020. To be honest, I was surprised to see any names I recognized on this list. Trubisky, Murray, and Thompson are the players Anthony Richardson comps to the best because they're all 4-star recruits, or in Murray's case, a 5-star recruit. The big difference that stands out is in the passing department. Richardson only has a completion percent of 54, whereas most of the others are over 70%. Then again, Richardson blows everyone out in rushing. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the caveat to the study. This is a very low sample size, and his production now is virtually impossible to carry through to the end of the season. The key to his outlook is just how much he regresses. Regardless of how this turns out, Anthony Richardson is a fun player, and I look forward to watching him this year. Maybe we can revisit this later in the year to see how things shook out and look at his comps with a larger sample size. Now back to you.
A bummer that we did not get to see Anthony Richardson today. Maybe could have made a difference in that Alabama game. Let's go to our Left Coast check-in, a weekly segment that you and I do together, Kevin. I think at this point, we just have, the chemistry is undeniable. We have a great time doing this every week. Welcome back. You've been with us all show here tonight. You're doing some heavy lifting here for us. So thank you for coming on again.
Hey, anytime I can help out. I don't get invited to the regular pod. So if I can get on this pod, I'm happy.
Maybe it's because you charged that $50 to $100. Oh no, that was somebody else. Never mind. That was a different controversy today. Okay. We stay topical on this show. All right, Kevin. So we've got 3 games here tonight to check in on over there on the West Coast. Let's start off with the Arizona State and BYU game. What do we have going on there?
Yeah, you know what? Arizona State came in as a favorite, and they're losing 21-7 to BYU. Jaden Daniels has 2 interceptions, so Jaden Daniels' hive is not looking good. And after that, I mean, really no one in the receiving crew has done well. White scored a touchdown for Arizona State, but it's been BYU, all BYU. Jaron Hall, unfortunately for us, Matt might be right. He had 174 yards right now at halftime with 2 touchdowns. Tyler Algier, though, only 1 touchdown. So obviously, he's not there in terms of big input, big volume there. But Hall looks really good, and Hall's starting to get to that point where you might want to try to add him to C2C leagues. I don't know where he's at. I have him on a roster somehow. I saw it today. I don't know how he's on that roster, but I think that if he's going to put up these numbers, and if BYU is going to win this game, I mean 3-0, they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I thought there might be a step back there this year, but Jaron Hall has stepped in and filled that void well. And we have an Isaac Rex sighting as well. He has a touchdown. Yes. I know there's been some concerns about his performance this year. So for all of you guys out there, there you go. Fresno UCLA, a game that a bunch of us on the tailgate this morning picked Fresno to win. They were 11.5-point dogs. How are those Bulldogs doing?
Oh, man, Bulldogs, baby. I'm so excited for them. I'm a transplanted Bulldog fan as well since I live here. Jacob Hayner, 117 yards, 0 touchdowns. So he's actually been kind of quiet, but Fresno State's up 20-10 right now in the second quarter. Ronnie Rivers just scored on a touchdown, a 36-yard touchdown run. So he has 9 carries, 65 yards, and 2 touchdowns. All Ronnie Rivers does is score touchdowns. That's literally what his life is at Fresno State. I think he has almost 50 career touchdowns already. Other than that, Jalen Cropper's there. He had 20 25 catches, or excuse me, 25 yards, 25 catches to be legit. 1 touchdown rushing, so he's gotten on the board there. But UCLA has been held. That Fresno State's defense held him down. DTR, he has 38 yards passing, 0 touchdowns. Zach Charbonnet has a touchdown, but 7 yards on just 2 carries. So nothing really going for the UCLA offense. Down 20-10, that's not how you want to look at home.
No, definitely a stout test for them, and Fresno looks like they might be going for the upset here. Last game, Boise State, Oklahoma State. Later into this one than the other two, we're almost at the end of the fourth quarter. We got a nail biter.
Yeah, we got a nail biter. Oklahoma State's got the ball. They just got 4th and 3. They're up 21-20. Boise State was winning at the end of the. They were looks like they were taking control, and then Oklahoma State 14 unanswered in the second quarter. Right there, 2 touchdowns right at the end. Spencer Sanders had it, so it'll be interesting to see if it looks like they're going to punt here. So Boise State's going to have a chance to win. Hank Bachmeier has 229 yards, a touchdown, interception. George Halani is going back to the cave. He's got nothing, 0 touchdowns there. But Khalil Shakur, man, that kid is a stud. 8 catches, 78 yards. He's not on the board for a touchdown yet, but he's legit. Oklahoma State, Warren, obviously Warren has had a great game. Jalen Warren, 209 yards rush or 216 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. They haven't been able to stop him at all. So if you started him, I give you props there. The big kid that's actually let me down while doing this is Brendan Presley. No receivers in there. They're all injured, and he has 1 catch for 22 yards. He's been kind of a disappointment for me in C2C formats. But other than that, it looks like Boise State got the ball back with 3 minutes left, and we'll see if they can pull out a W.
And this is not a typo, folks. Spencer Sanders is 4 for 11 for 55 yards. So they are lucky that Jalen Warren has been carrying them here tonight, or they would be in some trouble. Kevin, thanks again for hopping on here with us. You can find Kevin, his work. He's a Devy contributor at Fantasy Pros, contributor here with us at Campus to Canton at DuBois_22 on Twitter, and one of the hosts of the Devy Royale. He's got a lot going on. Go check out whatever he's doing. It's all good stuff. Kevin, thanks for checking in from the West Coast.
All right, man. I appreciate you guys. Finish this show strong.
Just for you. All
you.
Right. We'll do it.
All right. No, Jaron Hall, just run the ball. All right, guys. I'll see you guys later.
See you, Kevin. All righty, Matt. What say you? We bring this thing home together?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. And then we'll finally let you get some well-deserved rest. All right, Matt. I've been skirting around this topic all night, but I really think we need to have a discussion here about Trayvon Henderson's record-setting day here. A huge day. I don't think it's a hyperbole to say that Ohio State probably would not have won this game without him. Yeah. 24 carries, 277 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Was basically the entire offense for the day. Got them moving, was the kick in the butt when they just weren't doing anything. Put into context here, Matt, what did we witness here today? I mean, this was a performance really for the ages.
Yeah, I don't think any of us expected this out of him either. He didn't play football at all last year, and all the talk was coming out of Ohio State, they were going to take time to get him, integrated into the offense and allow. I kept talking about. I thought November we'd see this out of him. Maybe not this. I mean, he finished 3rd all time behind Eddie George, and I believe it was Archie Griffin. I think we're the 2 ahead of him in rushing yards in a single game. That's how good of a game he just had here. And I think it makes sense because Ohio State's offensive line is so good. You go back to that Minnesota game, and they talked a lot about it in the coverage. They would go and look at the runs that Mayan Williams had. I mean, they were opening up holes that semi-trucks could drive through. Mayan Williams and Master Teague were not doing anything with them, and we saw what a good running back can do. I think they really wanted to rely on him because Stroud has been struggling. They wanted to be able to find a weapon that they could just give the ball to because as much as we like those wide receivers, C.J. Stroud has to get them the ball, and he struggled to do that. Where Henderson, you just turn around, hand the ball to him, and look at all the work that he did. I mean, they had another big run called back. He lost, I think it was 15 yards on a face mask call where he face masked a dude and kind of just threw him down. So Henderson, I think after this performance, there's no way they go back to Mayan Williams or Master Teague. And, Ray called me out on this when I jumped on with him earlier this afternoon, and I'm going to stick with it. I don't see why you can't say he's going to be better than Bijan Robinson for C2C and Debbie formats. You can't, in my opinion, name one thing that Bijan is better at than Trayvon Henderson. And I think at the game we saw tonight, we haven't seen anything like that out of Bijan. Granted, Ohio State has a better offensive line and probably a better team around him than Bijan does. But I think Henderson is legit. I think he's going to be one of the best. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this year, Trayvon Henderson is the most expensive college piece for you to get, whether it's in a CFF Dynasty League or a Campus to Canton League, because I expect this not 277 yards, but I think he's going to continue to put up massive numbers every single week.
Probably a bit of a stretch to say we hadn't seen this from Bijan Robinson when he averaged about 10 yards a carry down the stretch last year, and that's almost exactly what Trayvon Henderson averaged.
Did he ever put up 200 plus? How many games has he put up 200 plus rushing yards? Just curious.
Yeah, I don't think we can argue with that because he has not seen the volume.
Fair. That's fair. Okay, and that's what I said. And he doesn't have that offensive line either. I will give him that. I won't go into the quarterback discussion because they haven't been great at Ohio State either at the moment. So.
Look, I mean, I think we talked all offseason here at Campus to Canton, and I don't want to say that we were the only we were not the only people saying this. We certainly weren't pioneers for saying this or anything like that. But I think we all kind of learned the lesson last year. If you think that there is a running back that has the pedigree, the talent, the skills, the situation going into the true freshman year, that there's no reason why you can't take that guy really, really early in drafts, probably earlier than maybe common sense dictates you should. Last year, Bijan was going in the 4th or 5th round of startups, I believe. This year, Trayvon was really not making it past pick 16 or so in drafts. I think his ADP was a little bit higher than that. So I think we all kind of learned our lesson last year. We said, if Trayvon is this level of a player, he's certainly at this point, I think if you had to do a redraft or, a startup right now, how early, a Trayvon top 5 pick?
I think so. I mean, who you realistically taking over him? Bryce Young. I would still take Bijan, even though I do think Henderson can be better. I honestly think there is, even though he hasn't touched the field, an argument for Quinn Ewers just based on what we know or what we think we know about him and him being in that offense. And then who you taking over him? I'm not taking any wide receivers. We already had the discussion about quarterbacks earlier. So is he 4? I mean, I really don't see why he wouldn't, because I'm not taking Tank over him. As much as I love Jahmyr Gibbs, we're not seeing really the points out of him, and I think he'll be fine once he gets to the NFL. But we're not seeing that production out of him right now with Georgia Tech. So, I mean, who else are you going to take over him?
No, I don't think there's anybody. I mean, we've soured on these quarterbacks. I mean, the wide receiver, in my opinion, is really never worth taking an early pick on in a startup like that, with just how many of them there are out there. I mean, I think the only wide receiver that would be in that discussion would be Kayshon Boutte, right?
I would think so.
He had at least one touchdown again today. That LSU offense was humming all day, so to speak. I don't think top 5 is a stretch. I think at this point, I wanted to say the guy that had seen his value, he didn't see his value increase that much, but it's solidified today.
Yeah,
that was the game. Even if he doesn't touch the field again the rest of this year, that value is locked in for at least 1 year and probably 2. And that's a big deal in a format where you're getting points now, but the value itself is just what he can do, especially once he gets to the NFL.
Yeah, I think after what you saw today and seeing him get the workload, there may have been a shot if, say, whoever had him on his roster was going for it to win the CFF side this year, maybe you could get him away by sending him a Isaiah Spiller and a quarterback or something like that. Guys are going to help him win that CFF side this year. But then once you see Henderson do what he did today, and realistically, they're not going to play a very good defense for quite a while. But I don't think they get Northwestern this year on their schedule. They get Akron next week. I guess I could just pull up their schedule.
When's Penn State?
Penn State is on the 30th. They get the night game right before Halloween, which I think would obviously be a very good game. But after watching Tank beat up on Penn State, I don't know that I'm necessarily worried about Henderson going out and having a good game. They get Indiana in a couple weeks and then Michigan at the end of the year, which I think Michigan could be. They've been fairly good to start off the season rushing defense. So outside of them, Penn State, the best defense he had to play was Oregon, which has already gone and off the schedule, because I don't know about Indiana's defense. I mean, Ford had an okay day today. And then Penn State, as you mentioned, obviously, then that is on the 30th. But with the way Tank Bigsby looked today, I wouldn't be surprised if Henderson's able to go out and look. So, yeah, with him getting all that, I don't think there's really any way that you can trade him now or trade for him. It's going to cost you everything.
pretty crazy how he. I mean, you could pair him realistically in drafts with Kayshon Boutte this year. I actually did that multiple times, and now
Same.
You're feeling real good about picking from the 9 slot or whatever this year, and walking away with both of those guys.
Yeah, I think what was it? Kevin, I think this was off air, but Kevin mentioned one of the guys who works at the site with us, PJ. And I remember, I think it was one league we're in together, and he was giving me a bunch of crap because I have Breece Hall rated so high because I still think he's a very good running back. But I took Trayvon over him at the 9 pick actually, and he was like, "Oh, I can't believe you did." I'm like, well, I think he's gonna be. Well, I'm not regretting that pick one second now. Like I think he's just phenomenal.
Yeah, we are on a very nice streak with these running backs. Is going to come back to burn us again. It'll be very interesting to see what year that takes place. Let's look forward to next week, Matt. Week 3 here, mostly in the books. You got a couple of these West Coast games still to finish up. Any games stand out to you as one that you're just really excited for, either just from a game perspective or there's somebody maybe you're watching you want to see them in a particular matchup?
Yeah, so Thursday night, I don't think we have a very good Thursday night game this week in the NFL, if I'm remembering correctly. I can't remember who it is, but I'm almost positive it's not a good game. I'm excited to watch Marshall Appalachian State. I'm big on Grant Wells. Rasheen, I think it's Rasheen Ali is how you say it. I talked about him this morning on the tailgate. Phenomenal game today. I saw he put up over 30 points in fantasy. I don't know his exact stats at the moment, but Grant Wells I really like as well. And Appalachian State, very good offense. I'm excited to watch that game. Then moving forward, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Saturday, early morning game. I think that could be a very good game. That's Notre Dame's game right before they play Cincinnati. Can they go out there and fix some things on that offense before they play? In my opinion, probably going to be one of the better teams on their schedule. And then outside of that, there's really not a lot of games that stand out to me. I mean, Texas A&M, Arkansas, I think could be a very fun game, especially if Arkansas continues to look the way they have. I think they can put it to Texas A&M a little bit, and they're definitely a team that is trying to, I think, overtake Alabama, which doesn't look likely at the moment. I know I picked Texas A&M to win the SEC. That doesn't look very promising. So really outside of that, I think it's I don't want to say like a slow week because we thought last week was going to be a slow week, and then Oregon goes and upsets Ohio State. We had a lot of really good games, but I think those are probably the only 3 games I'm really looking forward to next weekend.
You highlighted the big one that I'm looking forward to. I really like this Arkansas team. Them and Kentucky were the 2 teams coming into the year that I really liked. I thought they could outperform some expectations there. Arkansas again today. They played Georgia Southern. I get Georgia Southern is not a very good football team, so I'm not necessarily hyping them up based on this victory. But KJ Jefferson had himself a very efficient day. 13 for 23 for 366 yards, 3 touchdowns. Treylon Burks, reintroduced himself again here today. 3 catches, 127 yards, a touchdown. It's that freaking running game there for Arkansas that I think is going to be really interesting to go against Texas A&M. You had Dominique Johnson today, 5 for 72 and 1. Raheem Sanders, 10 for 43. AJ Green, 7 for 37. They just have all these guys that get between like 5 and 15 carries, and they all get between 50 and 75 yards. Most of the time, at least a couple of them get a touchdown. They just have this deep, versatile, physical, just athletic running back room. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch them go up against Texas A&M, who looked a little better today than I think we expected them to. So that is the game that I'm most looking forward to. I really want to see. I want to see an Arkansas upset. I think that would be just a really awesome outcome there for maximum chaos.
Are you looking at this Ole Miss game?
I heard Matt Corral has like a bajillion fantasy points.
81 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. 326 in the air, 3 touchdowns. Jonathan Mingo going crazy, 136 yards. Braylon Sanders, 71. 61-21 with 8 minutes left to go in the third quarter. If you were playing Matt Corral this week, my sympathy is for you. He's probably beating lineups single-handedly. 7 touchdowns. That's ridiculous.
We have let's spend a minute here real quick just to wrap up the show here tonight on that note. Matt Corral, Heisman favorite at this point through week 3 of the college football season?
He has to be. I mean, he's gone out there, even last week, which I don't think was a great week for him, he still was very good. I mean, what's the big thing we all worry about him? The interceptions, right? Has he thrown an interception this year? And maybe I think he threw one last week.
That's it.
Yeah, he didn't throw any in week 1, and so far he's sitting at 7-0 right now. So I don't see how he can't be, because the big question is obviously going to be right when he goes up. He gets to Georgia in a couple weeks. I think that's the one game I remember talking about him a little bit with some people. Yeah, right now he is sitting at 6, 12, 18, 21 for 0 right now, 21 to nothing touchdown interception ratio, which is just ridiculous. That's not counting the rushing touchdowns. So he gets Georgia. Obviously, he'll play Alabama, I would think, if they go undefeated and get into the SEC championship game, which possibly seems likely, I guess, if they can beat Georgia. So are they on the same side of the conference?
I think they're on the same side as Bama.
So then then he has to play Alabama this year at some point, I would think. Let's see. I'll pull up their schedule. Oh, they do get Alabama next week. How did I know? It's in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. My bad. Bye week in between. I was going to say, there's no way I'd miss that game on the schedule when I was scrolling through there. So 2 weeks against Alabama. That will be a big one, obviously. I mean, even if he goes out there and say they lose the game by, even if it's 2 touchdowns, but Matt Corral only throws 2 or 3 interceptions. If he continues on this pace, doesn't have those 5 interception games, who else is it going to be? I mean, Bryce Young. Because
if he loses next week, that's going to be the argument.
Bryce Young
playing well, and he beat Matt Corral. So I think that's going to be his main competition.
I don't think Young will have anywhere near the stats right now than him. And I think Heisman relies so much more on the stats-based arguments than anything else. And I think while that'll be a feather in Bryce Young's cap, unless Corral goes out there and we see those multiple 5 interception games again this year, Adam Lewis may have been right. I think he's a lock for 101 next year, and he's probably winning the Heisman.
Yeah. It's been eye-opening here the first few weeks for sure. Matt, thanks for joining us here. Thank you to all the guests we had on tonight: Brandon Lejeune, Kevin Coleman, and of course the 2 of us. Until next week, guys, this is Campus to Canton's Coast to Coast. We will see you next week at 10 a.m. kicking off your football weekend again with the tailgates. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys.